I wonder sometimes what conversations these magi's, the wise men, had among themselves, or even with others where they lived, about their upcoming journey. How would they have tried to explain why it was they were going to follow this star? I can picture myself in one of their shoes trying to explain to my wife, well, sweetheart, that really bright star we've been seeing? Well, Deacon Matt, Deacon Bill, and I, we're going to go follow it, okay? And I'm sure her response would have been along the lines of, yeah, you do that. Oh, and by the way, is the life insurance paid up? Just curious. As Father Mike said, today we celebrate the Epiphany, God's revelation of himself, God born into our world and witnessed in those early days by a few. The poor shepherds, we heard that last week in our gospel reading. These wise men, the magi from the east. The magi were non-Jews. They traveled a great distance following this star for some reason. The first of this epiphany of God's sign of himself in our world. And to some extent, there's other epiphanies that we'll hear about in the upcoming weeks as well. The Lord's baptism, the miracle at Cana, all signs of God making his presence known in our world to us, that he's with us. He's here for us, and he wants us to know in our heart what he wants his will to be for us. There's some significance to the wise men from the east. God came not only for those Jewish believers, the people of Bethlehem and Judea, but he came for all men. Universal salvation made possible for all of us. Today's celebration reminds us of that we're not individually singled out, that his gift of eternal life is made available for everybody. And part of our mission as baptized Christians, Catholics, is to make that mission known, to share God's message with others, to allow them to understand what his promise and what his gift is. How we come to appreciate the love that he has for each one of us and how it's meant to be shared. The wise men had a mysterious call to follow this star, realizing the Christ child was something special. They witnessed something. Their longing, their quest to know what it was. And when they arrived, they presented their gifts, knowing that they really had experienced something special, that God had made himself known. The last line in today's gospel is especially important. It's important to the Magi, but it's also important to us. Having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country another way. Things were different for them now. This experience that they had, something had changed for them. Something had changed them. They departed by another way, a different direction in travel, but more importantly, a different direction in their life, in their mind, and in their heart. The wise men didn't know what that mystery was at first, but they came to realize what it was. Meeting the Christ child, they were now different, and the rest of their lives from this trip home were going to be different. They were going to share that excitement, that joy with others, realizing that that journey wasn't just about the star. It was about the meaning behind the star, the message that God had for them to share with others. It's a message for us to remember today. In order to see God's kingdom, to experience God's kingdom, we have to change our direction sometimes. We have to be open to what God's will is for us, what His plan is for us. A change of heart. The wise men experienced it and probably came to realize that their lives were going to be different and changing. Not what they had expected, but they were going to accept that this was something in their lives they needed to adjust to. It asks us that question: are we ready to accept God's will, to change our mind and our hearts sometimes, to adjust our way of life, the way we see things, in order to better understand what God has for us? We think about all those things we heard in the Christmas liturgies, how Joseph, Mary, the shepherds, the wise men, how their lives changed as a result of God asking them to do something. They reacted. We look at some of the saints, some of the great saints, and what happened in their lives. St. Augustine, St. Ignatius, St. Francis of Assisi, men whose lives changed dramatically after they experienced God's love. The apostles, fishermen, tax collectors, how things changed for them. They spread the word. St. Bernadette at Lourdes, Juan Diego, after their experiencing with the Blessed Mother, how they came to understand that part of their mission was to share God's love with others. Their lives changed. They realized God's love in their life, and they would share that message. There's something that's meant to be shared with others. The awe and amazement that we experience at Christmas, after all the gifts have been shared, after all the meals that we've had with one another, when that's over, that message of love is still meant to be shared with one another. At the beginning of Advent, we talked about making a commitment to change ourselves, a change of heart, metanoia. At New Year's, we make resolutions. And believe it or not, in 6 weeks, it's Ash Wednesday, and Lent is going to start. Another period of time where we'll stop, we'll reflect about what God's love means in our life and how we can share that with others. And maybe there's one challenge we can think about this year. Think of someone or some people that we'd like to invite back to church, to invite them back to experience and know God's love a little bit more. Invite them to the Ash Wednesday services that we have here. The journey, the cross, and crucifixion, which will be here on Ash Wednesday evening. I know I'm going to start with my kids, but let's try something different. Let's try actively inviting some people back to experience God's love. As we continue to share the love of God, we know that exists on our world, and we can share it with others. Epiphany Sunday is meant to remind us of our mission, to to be awestruck by God's presence, of God's love in our life. As we leave Mass today, as we go in peace to glorify the Lord by our lives, we depart changed a little bit. We leave a little bit different. In our hearts, yes. If you like, you can leave a different aisle or a different door you came in. So you can do it figuratively as well as in your heart spiritually. The Magi were on a quest. They were seeking something they couldn't quite define. They knew what they sought was meaningful, though. They continued that journey. Completing their search, it became clearer to them. They were forever changed, and they were going to let others know it. Seeking, searching, trusting, we're like the Magi ourselves. At times, doubtful also. But we're compelled to keep looking. There's always challenges ahead of us. And we always bring our gifts to Christ. We bring our gifts and share them with one another.